In 1939, 22 children at the Iowa Soldiers' Orphans Home in Davenport, Iowa, were enrolled in a speech study. Some had been judged to stutter, others had not. Its purpose was not to treat a condition. It was to induce one in children who did not have it. The children were not told what was being done to them. The adults responsible for their daily care were not told either. The work was completed, written as a graduate thesis, and then set aside. For more than 60 years, some of the people inside it did not know what had happened. When the records opened, several connected it to a question they had carried for most of their lives. The institution was the Iowa Soldiers' Orphans Home. It held children whose parents had died or who could no longer keep them. The state was responsible for their care. In the spring of 1939, 22 of them were selected for a study. They were chosen from an institution under state care. Some had speech difficulties. Some did not. What they shared was vulnerability. They could be studied without meaningful consent and without anyone outside the institution being told. In that period, children in state care were used as research subjects in more than one place. They were a population that could be reached, observed, and tested with little resistance. The study was directed by Wendell. He was a speech pathologist at the University of Iowa and one of the recognized figures in his field. Johnson had stuttered since childhood. He had spent years trying to understand where the condition came from and whether it could be changed. The dominant view around stuttering often located the cause inside the body, in the brain, the nerves, or the speech mechanism itself. Johnson came to suspect something else. He suspected that stuttering might not begin only inside the child. It might begin in the way adults listened, in their attention, their correction, their concern. A child watched closely enough for signs of stuttering might become afraid of speech itself. It was an idea he would later develop into a formal theory. In 1939, it was still a question, and the orphanage was where the question was tested. The experiment itself was carried out by Mary Tudor. She was a graduate student working under Johnson, and the study became her master's thesis. Tudor divided the children into groups. Some were given positive speech therapy. They were told their speech was normal or improving and were treated accordingly. Others were given the opposite. Among them were children who spoke fluently. They were told something was wrong. They were told they were beginning to stutter. They were told they should catch themselves before it grew worse. This was the part of the study that would later give it its name. For several months, Tudor met with the children. With the negatively labeled group, the sessions followed a pattern. Their ordinary hesitations, the pauses and repetitions that occur in any child's speech, were treated as warning signs. They were told to watch their own mouths. They were told to stop and think before each word. They were corrected, reminded, and observed. The staff at the orphanage were told the children were receiving speech therapy. The children were told the same. Neither was told that part of the study depended on making fluent children believe their speech was failing. The experiment did not produce what its later reputation often suggests. The thesis does not clearly show that any fluent child became a clinical stutterer. The disorder Johnson wanted to understand did not appear in a clean, measurable form. But something did. The children who had been labeled began to change. According to Tudor's records, they grew quieter, became reluctant to speak, covered their mouths when they talked, and left sentences unfinished. Speech became something to monitor. Every pause became evidence. Every mistake became a warning. The label had not created the disorder in the way the study had tested for. It had created the conditions around it. The watching, the doubt, the fear of one's own voice. Tudor completed her thesis in 1939. It was filed at the University of Iowa. It was not published. Its findings were not widely circulated. Its subjects were not followed in any sustained way afterward. Within the university's stuttering program, some of those who knew about the study began to refer to it by another name. They called it the monster study. The name did not come from the public. It came from inside, from people who understood what had been done and to whom. For decades, that was where the record stayed. The children who had been part of it returned to ordinary life. Some carried speech difficulties or a reluctance to speak into adulthood. They were not told why. In 2001, a reporter examined Tudor's thesis and the surviving documents. The account was published and the study reached the public. The University of Iowa issued an apology. A spokesman described the experiment as regrettable and stated that safeguards now existed to prevent such work. Mary Tudor was still living. In the years that followed, she spoke about what she had done. She said that if she were given the same assignment again, she would not carry it out. She said that when letters arrived from the children of the orphanage, she sometimes could not bring herself to open them. She returned, more than once, to a single explanation. She had been told to do it. At the time, she said, one did what one was told. What the experiment actually proved has been debated since. Some researchers have argued that the documented effects on the children were real and lasting. Others have noted that the thesis data do not clearly show that persistent stuttering was induced, and that the popular account may carry more certainty than the record supports. The framing of Johnson's intent has also been questioned, since the theory most associated with the study was not fully formed until after 1939. The case is contested in its details. What is not contested is that fluent children were told, by adults in authority, that their speech was failing, and that some of them were changed by being told it. Some of the surviving subjects, and the families of those who had died, brought a case against the state of Iowa. The state tried to have the case dismissed on legal grounds. In 2005, the Iowa Supreme Court allowed the lawsuit to continue. In 2007, the state agreed to a settlement of $925,000. The people who had been children in the orphanage, by then in their 70s and 80s, were compensated for what the record showed. The amount was small against the length of a life. By the time the file closed, most of the people inside it were gone. In the decades after Johnson's work, the understanding of stuttering changed again. The condition is now associated with neurological and genetic factors and typically appears in early childhood. The environmental theory Johnson developed was narrowed and much of it set aside. The idea the study was built around did not survive in the form he imagined. The harm outlived the question. The monster study became more than a study of stuttering. It became a record of what a word can do when an adult with authority places it on a child. The word was applied. The child carried it. And when the record was finally opened, it did not simply describe a speech experiment. It described what it costs to be told before you are old enough to refuse it that something is wrong with you. The file remains open. Subscribe to Eidolon Ledger to follow what comes next. Share this with someone who would understand the question.